Hello everyone and welcome once again to my channel. This time we are going to be having our second class on the sense organs, and we are going to be focusing on the eyes. We are going to learn so much about the eyes, so do well to stay to the very end of this video lesson because you are going to learn much about the eyes. Among the five sense organs, we have the eyes. Of course, in the previous video that I did on the skin, I listed the five sense organs, which includes the skin, the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the tongue. So now we are going to be considering the eyes. What is the primary duty or the role of the eyes? The eyes is involved in sight, the interpretation, or you can say that the eyes are involved in vision. All right, meaning that it is the eyes that we use for sight or to see. And we have two eyes, like a pair, meaning two eyes. All right, and then these eyes, they are like our eyeballs. They call them eyeballs, and the eyeballs are held in the eye socket by 6 muscles, and these muscles are grouped as the superior and inferior recti as one, and secondly we have the superior and inferior obliques, and then we now have two lateral recti. So these are the 6 muscles that tend to hold the eyeballs in position, and they tend to allow the movement of the eyeballs in all directions. But in the eyes of humans, the eyeballs, they move together, as opposed to what you have in some reptiles like chameleon. Chameleon can move their eyeballs independently of the other, meaning that they can move a single eyeball to one direction and move the other in the other direction. All right, so these are the muscles that are found in the eyes that tends to help to hold the eyeballs firmly into the eye sockets. So on the board, we are having the different parts that makes up the eyes, the different segments of the eyes. Now we are going to carefully look at them and look at the layers of the eyes as well as the functions of these different parts. But mind you, somewhere around the upper eyelid is where you have your lacrimal gland. When we hear lacrimal gland, what should come to your mind? Lacrimal gland is also called the tears gland. So basically, this gland helps in the secretion or the production of tears. And what's the main duty or the role of tears? Now, the tears helps to keep the eyes in a moist environment, in a wet environment, and also it tends to cleanse the eyes. All right, just imagine that you have dried eyes, you cannot see. Why? Because it's not in a moist condition, you cannot rotate the eyeballs. All right, so the work of this guy is actually to make the environment of the eyes to be in a moist condition. And what are the components or constituents of the tears? We have sodium chloride, which is a salt. Sodium chloride, that's NaCl, which is a salt. Of course, this guy is actually what makes the tears to taste salty. All right, for those that must have tasted tears. Then we still have another component, which is hydrogen carbonate. That's the component of the tears. These are components of tears. And then we now have lysozyme. Now, lysozyme is simply an enzyme that tends to destroy germs or foreign bodies that gains access into the eyes. All right, so these are the components. Don't forget that. Then let's quickly look at the layers of the eyes. What are the 3 main layers of the eyes? For those that will be writing exam, Be very, very focused now. We have three main layers of the eyes. And what are they? We have the sclerotic layer, which is known to be the outermost layer. Another name for this, you can just go with sclera. Sclera. All right. Then it is the outermost. This is the outermost layer of the eyes. Then we have the choroid layer. The choroid layer. Now this is the middle layer. The middle layer of the eyes. And we have the retina. Retina is the innermost layer of the eyes. All right. So we have the sclerotic layer, or sclera for short. We have the choroid layer, and we have the retina. So looking at these layers of the eyes, they have their duty or their roles that they play. For the sclerotic layer, it is actually the whitish part of the eyes. That part of the eyes that is kind of whitish. If you look at, let's say, the eyeballs, and then of course you have something like this. This is actually this part, this dark part that is so small. This is called the pupil. All right. Then this other dark part that you have surrounding that little part, this is the iris. Then you see this whitish part that is found at the sides is known as the sclera or the sclerotic layer. The primary duty of this is that it tends to protect the eyes as well as to maintain the shape of the eyes. So shape maintenance of the eyes is to this guy, which is the sclera. All right. And it is the sclera that bulged out at the front of the eyes to form what is known as the cornea. If you should check the outermost, which is the sclera, it bulges out here to form what? The cornea. All right. Then while at the back of it, it is perforated to form what is known as the optic nerve. All right. So that's it. Then for the choroid layer, this layer is primarily involved in supplying the eyes with food and nutrients. Why? Because it is this layer of the eyes that is pigmented, and also it contains blood vessels in the form of blood capillaries. So it is these blood capillaries that supplies the eyes with nutrients as well as oxygen. All right. Then there is something else that you need to take cognizance of. The only part of the body that does not receive blood supply is present in the eyes. And what part of the body is that? It is the cornea. The only part of the body that does not receive blood supply is the cornea, and it is present in the eyes. All right. So how does it now get its own oxygen? Since it does not receive blood supply, it gets it directly from the atmosphere by diffusion. All right. So then looking at the innermost layer, which is known as the retina. What is the duty or the role of retina? Now, for the retina is simply the photosensitive part of the eyes. It is photosensitive, the photosensitive part of the eyes. And why is it photosensitive? Because it contains some photocells or photoreceptors. They are grouped into two. And what are the two photoreceptors? We have the rods, and we have the cones. All right. The rods and the cones, they are the two photoreceptors. They are called photoreceptors because they are sensitive to changes in light. All right. These rods, please, you must be very attentive now. The rods, they are sensitive to dim light, dim light, or you can say black and white vision, black and white vision, or you can say night vision. All right, or vision of the night. So the rods, they are for dim light, night vision, or black and white vision. All right, or you could say colorless vision. Then while this one, they are for daylight. They are sensitive to daylight or vision of the day, or you can say colorful vision. Colorful vision. Alright, so that's for the cones. The rods, they are for night. The cones, they are for day. And looking at the rods are known to possess or contain a photopigment or photochemical pigment that is called rhodopsin. Rhodopsin. Now, this rhodopsin is simply made up of vitamin A, and a protein that is called opsin. Alright. Now, this rhodopsin, another name for it is called visual purple. Visual purple. So what happens is this: when light falls on the visual purple, it bleaches, releasing a chemical, a yellowish chemical called retinine and energy in the process. Alright, it's just like when you look at the sky and you observe that you start seeing dotted colorful substances, like more or less like a mirage. It's not there, but it's due to the bleaching action of the visual purple. All right, so if you are asked this question now in your exam, that what photochemical substance is found in the rods, it is what? Rhodopsin. Don't forget that. Then how about the cones? Now, the photochemical substance that is found in the cones is called iodopsin. Iodopsin. Alright, remember I said that the cones, they are involved in the daylight vision or vision of the day. So don't forget that. And again, there are some organisms that can only see at night and they cannot see during the day. Those organisms are called nocturnal organisms or nocturnal animals. Animals that can only see at night but they cannot see during the day, they are called nocturnal animals. Classical examples include bats. You know, bat is a mammal and not a bird. Then we still have organisms that can see during the day and they cannot see at night. They are referred to as diurnal animals or organisms. So these ones, they can only see during the day but they cannot see at night. And classical examples include the fowls, of course the chickens. You know, when it's gradually approaching night time, you see them gathering themselves together and then they are like preparing to get blind, as it were. Alright, so that's that about that. Then look at this part. There's a part here that is labeled yellow spot. That part, if you observe closely, you get to know that this part is found in the retina. You see it now? So it means that yellow spot is a part of the retina. But there is something that you need to take note of about yellow spot. And what is that thing that you need to take note of about yellow spot? Yellow spot is also known as, with a scientific name, called fovea centralis. Fovea centralis. That's the scientific name. Fovea centralis. Alright? Scientific name of yellow spot. And yellow spot, one unique thing about it is that it contains a very high concentration of cones. Remember that the cones, they are involved in daylight vision. Daylight vision. So if they contain a very high concentration of cones, meaning that the fovea centralis, they are very active. Hence, if you are asked a question, the part of the eyes with the acutest vision, when I say acutest vision, I'm referring to the sharpest vision, is actually what? The yellow spot. So the yellow spot is the part of the eyes with the acutest vision. So don't forget that. You can take note of this. Now, looking at this part, optic nerve, that I said is what perforates the back part of what? The sclerotic layer. Then what is the function of the optic nerve? The optic nerve functions in the transmission of visual impulses to the brain. to the brain for interpretation. It transmits visual impulses to the brain for interpretation. And what part of the brain does it carry the visual impulses to? It takes the visual impulses to the optic lobes that are present in the midbrain. Please, if you have not watched my video lesson on the brain, you should do well to check. It's still on this channel. Try to watch that video lesson on the brain. All right. So this guy basically transmits visual impulses to the brain for interpretation. Then when this guy is carrying the visual impulses, it leaves from a spot rather, which is called the blind spot. And this blind spot of the eyes is the part of the eyes that is insensitive to light, meaning it lacks photoreceptors. There are no rods and there are no cones. So please take note of that. The only part of the eyes that is insensitive to light is the blind spot. Why? Because it lacks photoreceptors. So don't forget that. Then, looking at the conjunctiva, this one, from even the structure, you can tell that it tends to protect the eyes. And of course, for the cornea that bulged out from the front of the sclerotic layer, that one basically is involved in refraction of light. It helps to bend light. It assists in the bending of light, just like the primary duty of the lens. It bends light and focuses it into the lens, and the lens primarily carries the same light and bends it furthermore to focusing the light and then to form images on the retina. All right. So this is like a fluid, the fluid that is actually between the cornea and the lens, or you could say the iris in that case. All right. So that one is still to bring about a protective measure as well as still functioning in bending of light rays as well. All right. Then what about the iris? The iris, if you look at them, the structure, when I drew the eyes just now, I told you guys something, that this dark substance is called the pupil, and this substance that is surrounding it is called the iris. And the iris is known to be the muscular diaphragm of the eyes. Don't forget it. The muscular diaphragm of the eyes is called the iris. And what's the primary duty of the iris? It helps to regulate the amount of light that enters into the eyes through this space. This space now is called what? The pupil. So it means what regulates the size of the pupil is actually what? The iris. So when the iris contracts, it results in the dilation of the pupil. So when the iris relax, it results in the contraction of the pupil. All right. So don't forget that these two, they are working together. If this guy contracts, it creates more space here, and then it brings about the dilation of the pupil. And what happens that can result in such contraction of the iris is, for example, somebody is coming from outside where you have bright light and then walks into a dark room. Now you see that this part will enlarge. This small part will now become enlarged. Why? It is trying to look for light. And when it enlarges like that, what results in the enlargement or the dilation, they call it dilation, is when the iris contracts, pulls together to themselves. All right? So that's it. Then what about when somebody who is coming from a dark place now exposes the eyes to bright light? It means that this guy will what? Will relax and spread. And when it spreads, it reduces the size of this pupil. Then you now say that the pupil has what? Contracted. And in that case, is actually the contraction and the dilation of the pupil. So can I say that the pupil is the part in which light enters into the eyes? Of course, is correct. So when the light enters through the pupil, what happens? The lens will now help in the refraction. When I say refraction, refraction simply means the bending of the light rays. So it refracts the light rays to where? Targets it to the retina. All right. So that's where the formation of images occur on the retina. So don't forget that. And of course, this is actually a transparent and biconvex in shape. It is transparent and biconvex. convex in shape. All right. So the primary work or the duty of this is to refract light rays. Then the suspensory ligament helps to hold the lens in position. Looking at the ciliary muscle, the ciliary muscle works hand in hand with regulating or altering the shape of the lens. There is something I would need to explain here because there was a time, I think it was 1979 JAMB, a question was asked on that. Now listen attentively. The ciliary muscle, when they contract, what happens to the shape of the lens? The shape of the lens now becomes more rounded or more spherical by the contraction. So please, you have to write this. This is very, very important. When ciliary muscle contracts, what happens to the lens? The lens becomes rounded or spherical. Take note of that. Then what about when the ciliary muscle now relaxes? When the ciliary muscle relaxes, then what happens to the lens? The lens becomes flattened. Take note of this one, it's very important. All right. So what will result in the ciliary muscle being contracted, or what can bring about the contraction of the ciliary muscle, is when the eyes is focusing on near objects. Near objects. So when the eye focuses on near objects, maybe you place an object very close to the eyes, what happens to it? Now, the ciliary muscle will what? Will contract, resulting in the lens becoming very round or spherical. But when you place distant objects and you are trying to focus on that distant object, what happens to the ciliary muscle? It relaxes and then the lens now becomes flattened. So the ability of the eyes to focus on both far or near objects on the retina is known as what? Accommodation of the eyes. Please take note of this. This is the ability of the eyes to focus on both far or near objects on the retina. So that's that about that. Then let's forge ahead. Let's forge ahead to looking at some eye defects. And when we say eye defects, we are referring to things that may happen to the eyes and then the eyes are not functioning properly. Let's see some of the eye defects. Eye defects. Now we have the first to be myopia. Myopia is also called short-sightedness. Short-sightedness. Then we have the next to be hypermetropia, which is also known as long-sightedness. All right. Then we have the presbyopia. Presbyopia. Then we have astigmatism. Astigmatism. We have cataract. Cataract. Then we also have night blindness. Night blindness. Then we have color blindness. Color blindness. Then we also have river blindness. All these are actually eye defects. They are very common eye defects that you shouldn't joke with. We also have one that is called xerophthalmia. Yeah, xerophthalmia. This is also another eye defect. All right. Then these are actually some very common eye defects that you shouldn't joke with. So let's start with myopia. Let's start with myopia. Now looking at myopia, another name for myopia is short-sightedness. And when we say short-sightedness, it means that near objects appear to be clearly seen, while distant objects are kind of appearing blurry. They are not clear. So close objects, you can clearly see them. Distant objects, they seem to be very blurry or not clear. And what can result in myopia? What can cause this myopia? Number one is when the eyeballs are longer than normal. That's one way that short-sightedness can come, that can result in short-sightedness. Another way is when parallel rays of light from distant objects or far objects focus in front of the retina. So when parallel rays of light of far objects or distant objects focus in front of the retina, it can lead to myopia or short-sightedness. Alright, then what are the ways that you can correct this myopia or this short-sightedness? Now, it's with the use of concave lens. So concave lens can be used to correcting myopia. Don't forget that. In case you are asked in exam, what can be used to correct myopia is what? Concave lens. Alright? Then, what about hypermetropia, which is long-sightedness? Hypermetropia, long-sightedness, is just directly opposite to the myopia, because this long-sightedness simply means that distant objects are clearly seen, while close or near objects appear blurry. And what can be the cause? What are the causes of this long-sightedness? Number one is when the eyeballs are smaller than normal. Then number two, when parallel rays of light from near objects focus in behind the retina. So when parallel rays of light of near objects focus behind the retina, it can result in what? It can result in long-sightedness. And what is the correction measure to this? Is with the use of convex lens. So convex lens is used to correcting long-sightedness, while concave lens is used to correcting short-sightedness. So don't forget that. Alright? Then the next is presbyopia. Now, you see this presbyopia. Presbyopia is simply an eye defect that results when there is a loss of the accommodation of the eyes. And what can result in the loss of the accommodation of the eyes is when the lens or the ciliary muscle loses their elasticity. So when there is a loss of the elasticity of the lens and the ciliary muscle, it can result in presbyopia, and that can come as a result of aging. That's when somebody approaches old age. So if you are asked what eye defect is commonly associated with old age, is actually what? Presbyopia. And what can be used to correcting this is with the use of bifocal lens. So bifocal lens can be used to correcting presbyopia. Alright, so the next is astigmatism. Now, astigmatism is simply an eye defect that is caused due to the uneven curvature of the cornea or the lens, or both. Uneven curvature of the cornea or the lens, or both. Alright, so when that happens, horizontally placed objects as well as some vertically placed objects seems to be blurry. And the only way that you can correct astigmatism is with the use of cylindrical lens. Cylindrical lens can be used to correcting astigmatism. Then the next eye defect is cataract. Cataract is an eye defect that is caused when there is cloudiness or cloudy nature of the lens. So when there is cloudiness or the cloudy nature of the lens, it can result in cataract. And this cataract is a very, very bad eye defect, because just assume that you wake up very early in the morning. You know how your eyes are trying to, regulate your sight. Just imagine that throughout the day is how somebody's eyes will just become. When there is cloudiness, meaning there will be a blurry vision throughout your lifetime. So the only way that you can correct this eye defect is when you carry out surgical operation, replacing the damaged lens with a plastic lens, and that's very, very expensive. All right, so that's how you can correct that eye defect. Then the next eye defect here is night blindness. Night blindness is an eye defect with a scientific name called nyctalopia. Nyctalopia, also known as night blindness. And this night blindness is caused when there is deficiency of vitamin A, which is retinol. Vitamin A has another name. Another name is called retinol. All right. So this thing is often associated with the word retina, which is a part of the eyes that is sensitive to light. So when there is a deficiency of this vitamin A, it can result in night blindness. And when they say somebody has night blindness or is suffering from night blindness, doesn't mean that when night is about coming, the person is blind. No. What it means is that even when the person finds himself or herself in a poorly illuminated environment, or in an area or a room where there is no much light exposure, it can as well result in the manifestation of that night blindness. All right. So the next is color blindness. What is color blindness? It is simply a kind of blindness that results when there is misinterpretation of colors. And that can happen when there is a damage done to the cones, because cones, like I said previously, they are responsible for what? Colorful vision. And when I say colorful vision, we are referring to there are some that are sensitive to red color, some are sensitive to green color, some are sensitive to blue and violet colors. You get the point now. So imagine that somebody who is suffering from color blindness. It means the person tends to misinterpret colors. You get the point. So now, this color blindness is often associated with genes, the genetic disorder, because it's actually an inherited trait, something that can be passed from parents to offspring. And it's actually sex linked also. It's only expressive in males, while females are usually carriers. All right. So just like we have hemophilia too, falls under the same category, that is sex linked genetic disorder. So the next is river blindness. Many students, they don't understand what river blindness is. Let me break it down. River blindness does not mean when the person approaches river, then the person automatically gets blind. That's not what it means. The reason why the blindness is called river blindness is because of the causative agent for the blindness and the vector that carries the microfilarial worm that is responsible for causing the blindness is usually found in riverine areas. And the vector responsible for carrying the microfilarial worm that is involved in causing this river blindness is called black fly. Black flies, they are often found in riverine areas, and this black fly is also known as Simulium species. So what happens is this: those persons that tend to often swim in infested water, or they bathe with infested water, those water that are contaminated. And how can they be contaminated? They can be contaminated with black fly. So when bitten by black fly, what happens is this: now the black fly will inject that microfilarial worm, which is called Onchocerca volvulus. This Onchocerca volvulus is actually the causative agent, which is the microfilarial worm. It is the microfilarial worm that causes this river blindness, which is known as onchocercasis. So another name for river blindness is called what? Onchocercasis. So that's what it means when we say river blindness. It does not mean that the person, when he approaches river, it gets blind. What it means is that the causative agent is usually found in riverine areas. All right, so that's for river blindness. Then the next, which is the last on that list, there is xerophthalmia. When we say xerophthalmia, we are referring to the dryness of the eyes, meaning that when you see this word zero, zero means dryness. It's just like xerophytes. Now, xerophytes are simply plants that can survive in dry lands or arid lands like the desert. All right. So when you hear of zero, it has to do with dryness. So when there is dryness of the eye, simply means that there is a damage done to the lacrimal gland. And what can result in such damage is also when there is deficiency of vitamin A. All right. So these are some of the things that you need to understand about the eyes when you are preparing to write in your exam. I hope I've been able to touch the key areas exhaustively. And if you find this video very educative, please do well to hit the like button and also share this video so as for students to benefit also. Even with your friends, you can share it. And if you are here to follow this community, this channel, please do so and follow. And also, for your friends that are yet to be aware of it, inform them too. All right. Thanks for watching once again, and I wish you guys all the best.